Welcome to the Friendly Firecast 150, the first podcast we've done in 2020. I'm Steve from Stevivor, and with me is...
Ben from Stevivor, and I'm surprised we didn't really realize we left on a cliffhanger. 149 at the end of 2019. I didn't realize we had a milestone coming up. I wouldn't have waited 4 months.
Well, it's because we've been planning so much for this milestone podcast, right, Ben? We have all these 150th celebrations planned.
The big celebration.
We really don't. We've just decided that we were really bored in self-isolation, so we wanted to do a podcast. So, hi.
We could have got away with it. You should have said the coronavirus has cancelled all our plans. We had a big reveal live show, but we couldn't do it.
So. Oh, yeah, we had giant giveaways, but they were for games that got delayed, so they're not available. Oh, yeah, all these things. Definite plans. Not really. Nice to talk to you. I think this is the first time we've talked properly in self-isolation. We chat like in text form all the time, but I don't know if we've not been on a Zoom call or a Skype call or a Microsoft Teams or anything like that before. So, hi, Ben.
No, because I think everyone's doing that at work now. Nobody knew what Zoom was 2 months ago, but that's what we're on currently. It's all the rage, except at my work where it's been banned for security issues, apparently.
Well, I've sent this meeting number to Hamish Blake. I don't think he's going to join, but it'd be cool if he did.
Yeah, well, we would have some new material. I think he's a gamer, actually. I'm not sure.
I don't know.
But yeah, how you doing? You've got to ask people, how are you doing in self-isolation? Is your mental health going well?
My mental health is fine. My alcohol intake is very, very greatly increased compared to normal. I've been working from home for about 3 weeks, which I don't take that for granted. I know that I get to, and a lot of people don't. So, case in point, my husband, who works at a hospital, who obviously isn't working from home. So, little bit of boredom, a little bit of worry, a little bit of stress. Just, it is what it is. But I'm doing okay. How about you?
That's good. Well, I'm still going to work, so I'm not cooped up at home. We are directed to still go to. In South Australia, we have one restriction less. I think we're at stage 2, so. We're not directed to work from home yet, and I don't think it will happen, to be honest. So less crazy, but still on the weekend, everything's shut. People are doing the right thing, so no one's arranging anything, even though we can still have 10 people events. No one's doing that because it doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's more the sitting around and, looking at the 500 games I could be playing, but I just don't feel like it. You kind of lose some motivation, and I'm not sure why, but we push on. I did get my NBN installed. I moved house about a month ago. Worst timing possible because no NBN. The appointments are pushed out because of the coronavirus. So I had to wait, and I was so worried it wasn't going to happen. I was stuck on 4G only. I thought the lockdown was going to come, the NBN would get cancelled, and I would just have no internet. So it does actually make you appreciate a solid connection a lot more when you don't have it for a little while. So that first day, I obviously had all my consoles turned to no auto updates because I had to save that 4G data. The first night I put it on, it had only been a month, and I think it was about 600 gig in just Xbox updates happened overnight. So you don't realize how much happens until you don't have it.
Oof. But connection is now stable? It's a good NBN?
Stable. It's working fine. What supposedly HFC has problems, but it's working fine for me. I can download everything. I'm up to date with all the latest games again. It was a rough few weeks.
That's really good. The thing that I've noticed is I think because my area has been NBNs for a little while, and I think the self-isolation movement has kind of pushed more people to take up the NBN around me because I was getting about 17 megabytes of download in my ADSL connection because I'm a pleb and that's all I have and all I can get. And we're hitting like 20 now in the middle of this self-isolation period. So I think, I don't really understand how things work. So I'm no expert, but I think less people using the ADSL connection means I get a little bit more speed.
Probably.
And I'll take it at this point. Cause
the Optus 4G that we had, like you get 200 or 500 gig a month, in the living room that was getting around 20, 25 down in normal times, it would go down under 10 in peak. Then I moved it to the other end of the house and it connected to a different phone tower and it got 150 at one point. Damn. So I don't know what's going on, but yeah, it's interesting. It's worth a look if you can't get NBN.
Yeah, well, and something that's kind of been a godsend, and we've put it up on the site, but I'll maybe make a note of putting it in the show notes. If you have a mobile phone from Telstra, both prepaid or postpaid, you can go and sign up for like extra gig. So I think I usually get 65 gigabytes as part of my monthly phone plan, but I get 90 for the next couple months until Telstra revisits it or the self-isolation period is canned. So to download things like Resident Evil 3 as an example, I was tethering to my phone just so I could get it faster because I could. But obviously that only works for 1 or 2 downloads, and then you hit that cap pretty quickly, especially with current gen games. And if we're talking about like this going for months and months and months, I don't even know if that would fit one next gen game if it's all 4K ridiculous assets and stuff. But that's future Steve's problem, not current Steve's problem.
It did push me to do something a little different because, like you, I pretty much buy every game digitally. But because I didn't know when I was going to get internet connected, I bought a couple. So Resident Evil 3, AFL Evolution 2, and Final Fantasy 7 on disc, which is, I just order them on Amazon. So they get delivered, you order them early. So I had them all set before I got the NBN connected. And it's retro to put a disc in a console. I forgot how it works. Like, it goes in there. It installs relatively quickly. AFL came with a freaking printed manual.
40 pages, you said?
40 pages, and Jeez. Final Fantasy is on 2 discs. Like, I didn't know that was a thing that happened this generation. I thought you just got like a little bit of the game and just downloaded 90 gig. But no, there was no patch. The whole thing came on 2 discs. Like, so yeah, there is a way still to get stuff without internet. I just moved on from it, and I had to briefly go back.
Nice. Well, and I think I've been too much of like a fatherly figure to people about this, but if you are going to go buy discs, that's absolutely fine, but just make sure you're doing the right thing when you go, like self-isolate, socially distance, all those buzzwords. I've seen way too many photos of people waiting for games at EB, like just standing on top of one another, and that's if you're going to get sick, that's one of the ways that you're going to get sick. So just do the right thing, people. Stay safe.
Yeah.
I'll be sick of hearing it, all those things, but I would be.
I think most stores do a pretty good job now. They have the X's on the ground. Most people follow it when they see it there.
Yeah,
it's just supermarkets where people lose their mind. But everywhere else, people seem pretty normal. Certainly, bottle shops, people are pretty civil, I've found. They stand on the X in Dan Murphy's. You get what you want. So pretty much the only place I'm going at the moment.
That's true. Oh, man, because literally my house, there's a car park and then a BWS. So as I said, my drinking intake is gone way up. And I'm already friends with the guys that work there. I'm more so now. They just got like spittle shields installed at the registers, which is very strange. They look like they're working at a bank, and if they hit a button, like the giant like shields would come slamming down to stop a robbery or something. But I'm sure those people interact with like hundreds of people a day, so any little safety precautions they get to employ, I'm all for it. It's crazy. Like, anyway, I'm trying not to make this like I sound like I'm a downer. I'm trying not to be a downer. I'm fine. Everything's fine. We're all fine.
There is one activity you can do at home that we finally have lots of time for, and that's play games. So
reading.
I think it's,
oh, you meant games.
Also reading. I've done a little reading too, but not that much. You can also read. There's 3 things you can do. You can watch Netflix, 4 actually. Watch Netflix, play games, read, and as ScoMo said, do a jigsaw puzzle. So we've got all 4 of those things going on at the moment.
Exactly.
Variety. Yeah.
Matt has done like 4 jigsaw puzzles. I'm too scared to go and help. I think we'd end up fighting if we tried to do a puzzle together. So a puzzle's his thing. I've been playing video games quite a bit. And thankfully Resident Evil 3 came out, and that's like my favorite franchise. So I was quite busy for the last couple of weeks. Sadly, I
finished that too. I finished it yesterday. What are you going to say? When did you finish it?
Well, I finished 2 iterations. I finished the Western Resident Evil 3 release, and I finished the Japanese Biohazard 3 Zero version release. So I've played like 2 separate versions of the game so I could get 2,000 gamer score, because I'm that person, Ben.
2 questions. How many versions of this game do you own, and what's the difference between those 2?
Well, I technically own 1, but I am friends with Jeremy Pryor, who is an American guy who's very into Resident Evil like I am. We met online when Resident Evil 7 was first announced at E3 because they released that demo straight away, and he and I just kind of became friends on Twitter, and we're investigating the demo and trying to solve pieces of the puzzle together. He's a really nice guy. So I had access to the game early on Steam, and I provided him access to the game early on Steam, and he managed to get a copy of the Japanese version, and he made it available to me. So he's very nice. Thank you if you're listening. And the difference really between the Japanese CERO, CERO, that's the game classification board acronym. The difference between that and a normal release is it's like less gory. So if you like do a headshot on a zombie and the head explodes in RE3, in the Biohazard one, it just kind of makes the same kind of visual flash of the head exploding, but it stays intact, if that makes sense.
Okay.
And it's more gamer score, so yes, please.
Yeah, well, I haven't bothered. I am considering, and normally I wouldn't do this, but isolation, playing it again to get I think there's the under 2 hours, there's the S rank, there's the not use the items box. And you have a bunch of guides to get these. So I'm considering playing through, probably on assisted, just to smash through and mop up some achievements. Normally I wouldn't bother, but I did enjoy playing it the first time, so I might do it. How easy is it to get that under 2 hours?
Very easy, especially if you have an infinite weapon. And if you want to make it even easier on yourself, you can go into the shop and get the bolt cutters and the lockpick. So rather than backtracking a lot in the first area, you just go straight to the bolt cutter areas, breeze by it. If you are more frugal and save up your shop points, you can get the infinite rocket launcher, and then like everything's just a piece of cake. So there's various ways of doing it. I got the 1000 gamer score in, I think it was like 16 hours on the Japanese version because I played it so many times. I was just speeding through, and I did my like one heal, no item box, 2 hour run in like one hit, and then I just kind of saved up for the rocket launcher and then smashed it on Nightmare and Inferno to get the achievements that are the hardest ones, I guess. So it's not too bad. You got to put a little bit of time into it, but it's short. It's really short. Like you can finish it in an hour if you're quite good at it. If you're not so good, like an hour and a half to 2 hours. So it's not a huge time investment. And if you're looking for an S rank, you can save 5 times, but also the game auto saves, and that doesn't count. So there's a lot of kind of tricks that you can employ to get to an S rank and get a lot of points and go to the shop and make it even easier the next time around. So I don't know if I'm just talking in circles now, but it's relatively easy. Did that help you at all, or am I just blabbering?
I think I might try for the 2 hour run, but I'm probably not going to go back and do heaps of them. But we've talked about the achievements. What about the actual game? I've never played the original, so I think Resident Evil 3 was the only main series game I hadn't played and finished. So I've finally done it, and
nice.
To me, it felt very much like kind of an add-on to Resident Evil 2 Remake. It is short. Even playing it normally, it took about 5 hours, and it doesn't feel like it. There's a bunch of reused assets. Story-wise, it's following the same track. And from what I understand, that's what the original Resident Evil 3 was, right? It was a quick follow-up to RE2 and was never meant to be the sequel.
It was meant to be a side story that didn't have Jill as the protagonist for a bit, and then they decided to make it the proper sequel, number 3, and they put Jill in the protagonist's place. And just like the remake, it takes place a day before and a day after Resident Evil 2. It was a little bit more adventurous. The original, it had like a dodge mechanic, not the same as in the remake, obviously, because the game's a lot different, but a similar-ish kind of dodge mechanic to get out of the way of zombies. So they were more aggressive and kind of more action oriented. And there was a really cool, I think it was called live action scenario kind of chooser. So a couple times when Nemesis usually would do something to Jill, she could pick between like A or B, and it would not hugely, but it would impact how the story played out. So she would electrocute Nemesis, or she would throw a gas thing and explode. I forget where that was. I think it was the restaurant. That might not be right. So, and then, the game would change because obviously if you electrocute Nemesis, everything's kind of still intact. But if you blow up a building, that changes the landscape of Raccoon City. So there were cool things about 3 that they took some chances with in the original, and I don't think they've done that at all in the remake. It's still really good to me. It's kind of polished, and it's quite polished and enjoyable, but it's not Resident Evil 2. I gave that a 10, the remake that is, and I gave this one an 8. Like, it's still good, but it's like an add-on, as you were saying.
Yeah, it feels like an expansion to RE2, basically. Here's some more story. I know all I really knew about it beforehand was that Nemesis would appear at some point. And the first time it happens about an hour in, well, not the very start of the game, but the first time you encounter him within the game, about an hour in, I thought, I don't know if I want to do this because it seems way too tense. But then it was all very scripted. So after that, it felt like he was no threat at all because I knew, okay, I can easily get around him, throw a grenade and just run, basically. And I know he's not going to turn up randomly because every time he has done so far, it's gone to a cutscene, basically. So was it more randomized in the original?
Yes. It was. So he kind of chased you around set locations, but it wasn't just. So there's a couple that I'm not making a lot of sense. If the downtown Nemesis encounter would have kind of kept up in that form, where he's just running around free roam and you're kind of trying to avoid him, I would have been really, really happy with that in various stages in the remake. And that's how it is kind of in Resident Evil 3. In the original, I found that most of the Nemesis encounters after a certain point were just, like running forward and he was behind you and you couldn't really see him because you're supposed to be always moving forward and kind of just going down this linear path. So I didn't like most of the Nemesis encounters. I feel like they've changed what they were probably going to do because people either loved or hated the Mr. X stuff in Resident Evil 2. Like, it made me very anxious. And I disliked it, but I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the challenge, and I didn't like it because that just made me want to like be super anxious. But I really liked how those encounters were scripted, or not even scripted. Those encounters were set up, so you never felt comfortable. You were always on edge. And like you said, with RE3, I don't feel like that was there at all. But I feel like that was almost intentional because that's probably Capcom reacting to how uncomfortable people were with Resident Evil 2, and either you loved it and you kept going or you just were immediately turned off the game. So
well, I felt exactly the same. I didn't like Mr. X, but I liked it at the same time. I liked when I got past it. It was a genuine accomplishment, but it was super anxious. I don't think I felt that anxious in a game since or a long time before, and I thought that's what was going to happen here, but even more, and it kind of almost put me off playing it. So I think you're probably right. They probably thought that would be too much if we do that again. But it also kind of nailed it there, so they probably wanted to do something different. And also, this game must have been developed very quickly, so I think that has something to do with it as well.
Capcom said that, because it's a separate team that did this than the one that did RE2, and Capcom has said that this has been in development for as long as RE2 was. I don't know if I necessarily believe that, but that's what Capcom's saying.
I don't believe that because after RE2, they basically said, "Do you want more? Maybe we'll consider doing RE3."
Yeah, and they've asked like since, "Do you want more remakes?" So to me, it's a toss-up if they're gonna do Code Veronica or Resident Evil 4 next, and they are they're just gonna keep pumping these out because they print money.
And 4 is probably a good one to do. We've had so many versions of 4, but we haven't really had a better looking version. We've just had the slightly high res 360 game, and
the controls break RE4 at this point. Like, they're so outdated and so just hard to get your brain back into. Code Veronica is probably the worst game in the franchise. The pacing's really, really bad. There's a lot of backtracking. It kind of meanders for a while. It's super long. So if any game would benefit from like the remake in the franchise, it would be Code Veronica. So I kind of hope they do that one next. But we'll see. I think.
Do you think I'd consider the first game again? I know we had that remake, but that was a long time ago, and it's not in the current style. So would they go back there?
Maybe. I think that'd be good. I really, really like the original, not original remake.
Yeah,
if that made sense. Because it was kind of like, for the time, it was evolving the gameplay, but keeping to the roots of the fixed camera angles and all that kind of stuff. So I really like the remake. I'll play Resident Evil whatever they decide to make it, to be honest. So who am I to talk? But I think, just quickly going back to the Nemesis thing, the original RE3 was called Resident Evil 3 Nemesis. And I think they couldn't call the remake that because Nemesis is so removed from the story in comparison to the original. Like he's not the main focus of the game. He's just kind of there and present. So I don't know. That was disappointing. But I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed it enough to play it, 2 iterations to 1,000 gamer score. Plus, I think I'm like 1 achievement away on Steam for getting the whole set there too. So I played Resident Evil 3 a lot.
So you really enjoyed it. It's a very polished game. It's in the same vein as 2. So I think there's a lot of enjoyment here. It's probably just that if you don't want to replay it, the value is probably not there.
Yeah.
If you're not going to do what you're doing. Yeah.
So the original RE3 also was the first, I think. I might be wrong. That's really bad if I am. But I believe it was the first to introduce the Mercenaries secondary game mode, which wasn't multiplayer, but was kind of like the multiplayer-esque kind of bit to the franchise. And Capcom didn't do that this time around. They dropped that mode and instead released a title that was bundled with RE3, but is, for all intents and purposes, like a second game called Resident Evil Resistance. It used to be called Project Resistance if you're sort of following it, and it's just like a 4v1 online only game where you have to play with other people and either play as 4 survivors trying to escape or play as one mastermind trying to kill the 4 people who are trying to escape. Have you played any of it, Ben?
Not at all. I've had a look at it and it just didn't seem that interesting to me, so I've not bothered.
Well, maybe after this we should jump in and give it a try because it's kind of fun. The problem that I have is I think it's not. What's the server word that I want? The host is the server person. God, words.
Dedicated servers?
Doesn't have dedicated servers. Thank you. So it kind of is reliant upon the 5 internet connections of the people playing, and I think I must be the only Australian playing, and I just have the worst time, and my connection's so bad. Like I'm shooting at a dog, but I'm not actually hitting the dog, even though it looks like on my screen I am, and then the dog, like 5 seconds later, is mauling me, even though it was halfway across the room. Like that's awful. There's 3 ways. To me. I know, right? Well, maybe we'll have a better luck when we're playing 2 Australians.
We'll have a try. Okay.
There's 3 kind of waves or 3 rounds as the survivors when you're escaping, and generally my internet connection is fine for the first 2, and then on the 3rd, when you're like the last thing you need to do to actually escape, my internet just falls over. So I don't think it's actually my internet. I just think it's the way that the net code's been done, or I don't know. Like I said, I'm not an expert at this kind of stuff, but it just always falls over. So
yeah, it seems to slip under the radar a bit in that you heard quite a bit about RE3, but I didn't even realize this was a thing that came with it until it installed itself. So
yeah. Well, I played it at in London at XO19, and it was like obviously just on a LAN. It was really, really good. There's like a practice mode that you can run, so you can just kind of get used to the different characters because they all have like Overwatch style abilities and they all can do different things. And playing the practice mode feels like playing RE3, and then you go and play like online properly and you just feel like you're wading through molasses. So it's enjoyable, but the connections are so bad that really takes away from most of the enjoyment. Hooray!
Well, we'll try it anyway.
Yeah, we'll see how we go. Before we do that, though, let's talk about more games. Probably Final Fantasy VII was the next biggest. I know we've been away for 3 months, but, whatever. And Australians got it like a week early, so yay for us.
Yeah, that was nice. That was good work by Square Enix to see the current state of things and release it early, so yeah.
Thanks, COVID-19.
Yeah.
You don't say that very often, so how much have you played?
Not a lot. I think I'm probably 2 or 3 hours in, so I've only got through the first few chapters, really.
You finished the Sector 7 little side quest-a-thon, or are you still in that?
I'm in Sector 7. I think I just got the trophy for finishing the 3rd chapter, maybe. I can't quite remember, but okay. Yeah, I'm in that zone.
So you've had some fights at this point?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think the battles are really fun. If we're talking about good things about Final Fantasy VII, I think when everything's working really, really well, you're analyzing your opponent, finding their weaknesses, bouncing between the characters in your party to exploit those weaknesses, to stagger enemies, to pile on the damage. And when you're playing like that, super duper fun. But then there's like the flip side of the battles is half the time you're just basically button mashing to beat someone up, and then they're dead. And that's kind of a downside. The biggest problem I have with Final Fantasy VII is that there's so much padding. It's like a 40-hour game based on, I don't know, like the first 10, 15 hours of the original Final Fantasy VII. So they just like stretch out every single narrative element, and they add in stuff that was kind of just a throwaway reference in the original. And as much fun as I had with it, I just was kind of wanting it to just keep going forward. And then like you get to the ending, which I will not ruin for you. It's pretty divisive in that, I don't know, it's not good. But it's like the same thing as RE3. It's like, it's good, it's polished, it's enjoyable. When it hits the right beats, it like really hits them and nails them, and it's like perfection. But then there's a lot of stuff that just really takes away from the overall experience. I don't know if that's what you've been kind of getting from it thus far, or if maybe you're still kind of in the intro, really. So you tell me.
Yeah. It's still pretty early days. And I played the demo on normal, and I decided I can't be bothered with this, so I'm going to play it on easy, which is too easy. But normal I thought was going to take too long if I had to fight everyone with that level of combat. So I would have liked it if there was a mode in between, like something between easy and normal, because I can't be bothered playing this for 50 hours. So I know there was a lot of, Kotaku or someone said don't play this on easy, but that's definitely why I'm going to do that, because to hell with them. Yeah. I can't be bothered putting 50 hours into this button mashing combat. I want to get the combat done a bit quicker. So yeah, I can see that it's going to go down that path. It's going to be, when you use some tactics, there's probably going to be that RPG element there, but the action I've added in does seem very button mashy. That said, I'm enjoying it a lot so far. So I don't think I've played Final Fantasy VII before either, or if I did, I didn't play much of it. So another remake, which is new to me.
You can get the original on Xbox One for like $10 if you really wanted to dump another 50 hours into something. And let's face it, you might have a lot of time on your hands in the next couple months, so you might consider it.
That's true, but I'm already going to say hard pass on that. I'm not playing the same game twice with 100 hours. That's out.
So like something that I can kind of equate what happened. So as an example, when you're in the first Mako reactor at the very, very start of the game, in the original, you go to Jessie and she goes, "Oh, my leg got stuck, but I'm free now." And in Final Fantasy VII Remake, you talk to Jessie, she walks forward, whole big cutscene shows something happened, she gets her leg caught under something, you have to go and do all this stuff to get to her to free your leg, and then she talks to you for a little while, and then so like just every single encounter from the original has just been like stretched to try to fit, like a proper length JRPG. We don't even know when the next bit of this, if it's the second half or if it's like the second third of the full story comes out. So I don't know. It's just one of those weird ones that I wish Square would have just kind of held back, condensed it, polished it, released it as one game. That
it is a little strange. They've done The Hobbit with it, basically. Let's stretch this out for a trilogy when it doesn't have to be. I think they did say trilogy, or at least that was the rumor. I don't know if they confirmed that or not. So it could be a while before we get to the end. Yeah,
maybe. I don't know. I'm not even, you know what, Ben? This is a new world, self-isolation. I am literally just going to pause the podcast so I can go get a beer. You can do that if you want as well. And then we'll come back and talk about more games.
Okay.
And just like that, the magic of the internet, we're back. New beer in hand, at least for me. I don't know if you did or not, but that's your choice, Ben.
My fridge is running low. Actually, I've got a selection at the moment. I've got a Heineken. I've got whatever's in the fridge. I'm going through my old supply of booze, basically.
Nice.
So it's like a random pick of beer at the moment. We just got what was on sale a few weeks ago, and now there's whatever comes out.
I have a Heineken mid-strength pure malt beer.
I feel less guilty with that.
I just feel less guilty.
We've got pure blonde as well, I think. That's, it says ultra low carb on the label, so that's got to be healthy.
Oh, definitely. And I'm drinking a mid-strength beer like I would, Ben, if I was able to go to the footy, which, of course, we are not. But
no.
thankfully, AFL Evolution 2 maybe will scratch that itch.
It will scratch an itch, certainly. So, yes, this had a really weird release, this game. So, to backtrack a little, it was meant to come out at the start of last season, so 2019. It kept getting delayed. Like every week, they were basically like, oh, let's delay it a few months again. And we got to the end of the year, and they said it's still going to come out in December. And everyone said, well, the small group of Twitter people who cared said, why? Why not just push it back to the 2020 season? And they eventually announced that would happen. They said, all right, we're not going to be able to make it because it's ridiculous to launch this winter sport in summer. And then it finally came out, and the real AFL season is suspended indefinitely. So kind of unlucky from that point of view. But it is here. You can play it. I had to go back and read my AFL Evolution 1 review to remember how bad it was. Gave that one 4 out of 10. This one's a 6. So I pretty much, to review this, I just read my own review and addressed the previous issues I had, and they've fixed most of them. So I don't know if you played or tried to play the last one. It was pretty much a 360 game. So they released a game called AFL Live 2 in 2013, and that was based on a Wii game that came out in 2011. So they've been using the same game and just making some tweaks to it.
That's a sign of quality.
Yeah, they've gotten some use out of it. It's not really a new game. But they've finally kind of gone through, I have to assume to a degree, they probably got the reviews of the last game and they kind of went through the main issues people had, assuming they had the same issues I did. And a lot of the key points have been addressed. So it does actually play kind of like a real AFL game now. The last one didn't at all. Players, if you watch a football game now, players follow the ball basically and they're all in a third of the ground. That's not what the old game was. They all just kind of stood in their position. So very 90s, but yeah, it does play a lot more like an AFL game. I think there's some level of fun if you're willing to commit to it. It's still kind of glitchy. It's still an old game. That's probably the main thing I've got to get through. Hopefully we get a new AFL game next generation, but it's an updated version of a game we got a long time ago. But it's all we're going to get because it's such a small market. It's such a small budget. It does feel like people cared about this one a bit more when they made it. So I think if you really want to play an NFL game, if you want to go back to that PS2 era, there were a couple of games on PS2 which people really liked because they kind of had that enjoyment and that passion, but they were terrible games as well. But there was still fun there. So I think they've gone back to that. And yeah, we can play or witness the 2020 AFL season, which may never return. So it's the only way to do it. I think it's worth playing if you're really into it, but it is an old game. That's pretty much my main point.
Do you think the AFL would ever consider using it to simulate matches, like some other sports codes are doing while they're shut down?
I don't think so. It's too... I mean, you could have a couple of... Yeah, it's just too random. Even I simulated through some of a season to get to the end, and the results don't make any sense, like even within the game. So simulated matches aren't that great.
So what you're saying is North Melbourne won the grand final?
I actually got Melbourne to win a grand final in simulation. So
damn.
That's how fake this game is. If you're a non-AFL fan, Melbourne is the first football club. I actually think they might be the oldest football club of any code in the world that still exists. So they've been around since like the 1840s or 50s or something. And they've only won one premiership in the 60s. So a friend of the show, Gaetano, has been, well, not alive since their last premiership, but his dad was, and he's a big fan, and he's never seen a real one. He can see it in AFL Evolution 2. It is possible. Melbourne has won a premiership. And I needed them to get an achievement, basically. No, I didn't.
Oh, wow.
Too obvious that it was fake. Yeah, I do feel one of the only main additions they've had in terms of modes is they've added a live match mode, basically, where you're meant to be able to get the current results of the most recent round and resume from like half time. So say, Melbourne's 20 points down and they lose, you can resume with Melbourne 20 points down and then change the game and win. Cool. I think a lot of other sports games have that too. But obviously that doesn't work because the real season is not happening. So the one extra mode they've added is not actually really available. But yeah, that's a bit of a shame. That's not really their problem, though. That's unlucky.
Well, it works in that the results are 0-0, so you can just jump in and take over from there.
Yeah, well, we got round one happened, so you can play it for round one only. Yeah.
Whoops. Well, Yeah. I haven't really played a lot of AFL games, and if I read your review and took one thing away from it, it's that you have 40 pages of instruction manual telling you how to play, and nothing that really helps you in the game to get used to controls and the likes.
No, there's no tutorial. The tutorial in the game is just that menu again, the manual again on the screen. So basically, it's a figure it out situation. So yeah, good luck to you if you're going to play online and haven't played the last one.
I would rather play Animal Crossing, and watching Matt play Animal Crossing, I don't really want to play Animal Crossing. So maybe you can try to convince me why that is fun for people.
Well, I probably won't, because here's the thing. Animal Crossing is already, it's only been out for about a month, maybe even less, actually only a few weeks. It's one of my most played Switch games. I think I've already hit, like, Switch counts up in 5-hour increments. I think I'm at 25 or 30 hours. And there's not many Switch games besides your Mario and Zeldas which hit that for me.
Yeah.
So I'm already there, but I'm kind of over it. It's such a drainer. Now, I really liked Animal Crossing. It's the original on GameCube, which was originally an N64 game. And they basically remake that game every time they do it. So talking about remakes, this is probably, you could throw this in. They kind of just evolve it, but it's remaking the same thing. And they add some new features. This one, you're on an island, and you do the same things. You've got to earn your way to basically pay off your house, pretty much through the fruit trade initially. You start your island with I had oranges. I don't know what Matt had, and you try to get other fruits.
Matt has oranges, so you guys are like incompatible. There's no point in being friends.
Does he have other fruit? Because I have pears and peaches as well.
He has friends with. See, I don't really understand. So we have a really good friend named Matt, also named Matt, who has peaches, and I think his friend George had something else. So I guess if he's obtaining those, he can plant his own trees, and then he has those things in his island too, or does he just have to keep going to their island to get them?
No, once you got them, you can plant them, and then you have them on your island too. So
okay.
That's a big
why don't I just invite you to Matt's island and you can pilfer from it? Is that?
I think we've got the same thing. But yeah, that's what you do. So you can visit your friend's island. That's much easier than the old days. Back on GameCube, you had your island on your memory card. You took that to your friend's house and put it in slot 2 and traveled to their town, like old school.
Jeez.
Now it's all online. Yeah, so pretty much it's not a long play game. So I turn it on, I play it for 5 to 10 minutes a day, do whatever thing happens, because the main point of Animal Crossing is it's a real-time game. So each day in the real world is a new day in the game. Different times make a difference. So the turnip plate, it only comes between 5 a.m. and midday on Sundays. So I bought some turnips this morning. We're recording on a Sunday.
Matt told me about that. And then you can go to other people's islands who have better turnip stock exchange prices than you.
Yeah, so the Nook store, whatever yours is called, it starts as Nook's Cranny. They will buy turnips off you, and 2 times a day they have different prices. It's like a mini stock market, basically. Oh. And you try to buy... You have to buy them for what they cost, and they start pretty high, and then you need to try to sell them higher, obviously. But at the end of the week, so next Sunday, the turnips will spoil, and then they're worth nothing. So you need to sell them at some point during the week, try to make more money, but it's a gamble, and it's kind of funny in the current economy. The thing I'm most worried about is my turnips spoiling and losing me a bunch of bells. Yeah,
I guess that's a nice distraction from the problems of the actual real world, worrying about.
Yeah, I can leave my house in Animal Crossing. I can go see other people.
Think of all those Nook miles you're getting. Jeez, like we're not getting air miles.
Yeah,
in the real world.
It's always been a bit of a chore game in that you've got to weed your island, you've got to earn money basically to keep building your house. There's a lot of social commentary there people could put on. But this one allows you to eventually terraform the island and basically change the whole area and set it up. So it's much deeper than the older Animal Crossings. I can't remember the 3DS one, so maybe that had it too. But and I've reached the point already where I don't think I can be bothered doing all that. So I'm pretty much just paying off my house. That's my focus. I
like it. I know it's good. I'm just focused on paying off my house in Animal Crossing.
In the real world, I'm not paying off any house, so you've got to pay it off somewhere.
Matt has a spreadsheet that I've seen where he has all the different fish that can be caught, and it's broken down into like time of day and location in the real world because it's different depending on the hemisphere. And Matt with the Peaches is in LA, so I think their Matts are tag teaming, going to each other's island and
because he will
trying to circumvent some of that. So
yeah,
I don't quite understand what they're doing, but they seem to be doing it for many hours a day. Unlike
the seasons
for like 10
the seasons make a big difference, and I think this is the first one you can pick which hemisphere you're in. So it used to always annoy me that we would have like snow during December because they just assumed everyone is in the northern hemisphere. So they finally let you pick. We can have the correct weather for our real world environment. Somewhat, there'll still be snow, I assume, in winter, but you need that for some variety.
Yeah, well, you can just pretend you're up in the
yeah, that's true.
Mount Buller or
mountains.
Yeah.
Look, it's a game which even back when I put in hundreds of hours on GameCube and probably progressively less on the future games, but then I'm kind of back to a degree here. And the more you explain to someone, the worse it sounds. It's like, it sounds like your daily life chores, which it is, but for some reason it's quite relaxing. And it's just that, we talked about Resident Evil being really tense, at least RE2. It's the flip side of that. It's just a game you can just sit down and play after work for a short period if you don't have hours to play, but you just want to check in on something and progress something a little bit. It's a relaxing little short play game. You can do what Matt's doing and spend hours getting your fish if you want, or you can ignore that and just play a little bit. So that's the appeal of Animal Crossing.
Well, there you go. Anything else that you've been playing? I've been playing a lot of like really weird board games on Xbox, like Pandemic, the board game.
I played Pandemic yesterday just to get the achievements, and because I thought it sounded accurate. I think it's on Game Pass. That must be why I played it.
Yeah, it is. It's really fun. I like it. I've never played the actual board game, so
no,
I can't compare it. But I was having fun with it. Once you get it, like it took me a little while to understand what I was actually supposed to be doing, but now I get it, and I'm quite strategic.
Yeah, I don't really get it.
It takes a bit of time.
A lot. What else have I been playing?
Trivial Pursuit, Uno, Jeopardy, Wheel of Fortune.
Trivial Pursuit any good, or is it the same old questions?
No, it's good. Trivial Pursuit Live is what it's called. It's fairly old. Matt and I play it together. You can try to play online, but no one's really online to play it. But I guess if you and Claire played and Matt and I played, we'd have 4 contestants as opposed to just 2 and 2 AI. So something to consider. I think it's pretty cheap.
Yeah, okay.
And you can set like US or UK English, and it really changes the questions. And I'm not sure which is better because there's some like really English ones and there's some really American ones. So like Matt and I both don't get the UK ones sometimes. And sometimes I'll get some of the American ones that he doesn't.
So basically neither are ideal for us, but they're both okay.
Yeah. And it's still really good. Uno is actually really, really fun. I think it's like $15. It's Ubisoft made that one. I think they made all these Hasbro kind of ones actually, now that I think about that. But it's fun. There's like the normal Uno rules, and you can put on extra ones, like stacking +2 and +4 cards and all that kind of stuff. So it's pretty enjoyable. Jeopardy and Wheel of Fortune aren't as good, and they're those kind of weird games where like Matt and I were looking for games to play together, and like Trivial Pursuit as an example, like not that it matters, but we can both sign in and we can both work towards achievements and play trivia and have fun. Where like some of the weird ones only give you achievements for like the first person logged in, so it's just like one more thing to argue about in self-isolation. But it's still, they're all pretty good. They're all like really cheap right now. And I don't have a lot of like actual physical board games.
There's a massive sale on Xbox and I think on PlayStation too. So there's all this stuff is pretty cheap if you're interested, or just go to Games Pass and pretty much find something because there's heaps of stuff there.
Yeah. I just bought The Sims 4 for like $15 as well, in case I feel like playing The Sims.
You never know what's going to happen in isolation. You might get desperate enough to play anything.
Well, that's what I mean. There you go. Let's talk about some news, I guess. We've been away for 3 months, so there's a lot of stuff, I guess, in terms of next-gen consoles to discuss. Probably the newest thing is the new PS5 controller called the DualSense, not the DualShock. And I think they've called it a new name because it's basically a completely different configuration. Now it looks like an Xbox controller, really, not a DualShock. It has the offset thumbsticks as an example as to why it's not your old school DualShock. What do you think about it, I guess? Or what do you want to talk about the aesthetic look of it first?
I mean, I would like an all black one. I didn't like the two-toned. It looked unfinished to me, but I've got a feeling that that's what the console is going to be. It's going to be a white and black, which is what the Xbox One S was, but it was a very subtle little black trim. This is a lot more in your face, harsh change.
It looks like a really dodgy like prop from a bad sci-fi movie, like the weird two-tone, like it's supposed to be super futuristic looking, but it's just a controller that's white on the top and black on the bottom. It's kind of strange.
Yeah. I saw an all black one. I assume it was a Photoshop, and it looked good. So that's what I want that to look like. I think otherwise, I really like it. I think it's going to feel a lot more comfortable. Even going back to play Final Fantasy VII now, having been on my, I will admit, the $250 Series 2 Elite controller, it is hard to go to the DualShock. It just feels too small. I don't like the stick placement. I don't like the triggers, feel terrible. They still look too short, the triggers here, I think. They still look too spongy like they are, but we'll have to get one and see.
Yeah.
But I think the shape of the controller, it's all about that. You know, Xbox have even said on Series 1, or X, I should say, confusing name.
Yeah.
That they just pretty much kept the same controller but made it slightly more ergonomic. And I think that's what Sony's gone for. They finally admitted that we've had the same design since the PS1, basically, with only slight tweaks, and it's not that comfortable. It's not uncomfortable ever since the DualShock 4 has been fine. It was a big improvement, but I think it's time to move on. So,
and I'm totally lying. Sorry, I've seen so many mock-ups. It doesn't have offset thumbsticks. It just has normal DualShock thumbsticks.
Yeah,
I saw so many mock-ups that have different things, and like there's the one black one, there was the one that looked like an Xbox. So don't listen to me. It still has the DualShock thumbstick configuration that you're used to.
It's just the rest of it will feel like an Xbox controller, I think. They're sticking with the touchpad, so that's for the 3 backwards compatible PS4 games that used it. I don't really know why they need that. The share button is now a create button. I do think it's pretty funny that I think it's just got like 3 dots above it, and the other one has the hamburger 3 lines. So if you had to explain to your casual gaming partner, press start, because that's still what I call the button, start and select, or share or whatever, how are you going to know what to press? Like, there's no indication of what these buttons are anymore. Same on Xbox, So I think they haven't considered that, but we've all moved on. Apparently, that's cool. And so they are keeping the inset sticks. Not my preference. I think it's much more comfortable to have them offset, but I know a lot of people like it. So now you can choose, basically.
Yeah. The create button, they're going to detail what that means. They didn't explain it beyond it's not the share button. It's called create, which I thought was very Sony.
I think it's exactly the same as the share button, because if you press it now, it gives you an option. Do you want to save this? Do you want to go to the edit studio? Do you want to do a video? Do you want to do a screenshot? I think it's going to be that again.
Yeah. And in very Sony style, they were talking about there's an inbuilt microphone. So if you want to talk in a party without a headset, you can. They kind of neglected to tell people that there is the ability to connect a headset to it. That was kind of like secondary as part of their messaging, which was, in my opinion, really weird.
That's a good function, actually, because a lot of people don't, how often do you have someone who's like, I can't be bothered getting my headset, or I don't have it. So if that works, I think that is a good change, as long as it doesn't pick up too much feedback from your own audio. So when people had Connect as their mic, for example, it didn't really work because it would pick up the audio from that person's TV, and it wasn't great. So how they avoid that, I'm not sure.
And also, like, you're smacking buttons, and the microphone is in that thing that you're manhandling. Like, if I grab my microphone in front of me right now and start moving it, you'll hear like, like, you know what I mean? That kind of stuff. So I don't know. They did say that it's not meant to be a replacement of a headset, but it's meant to work in lieu of a headset, I guess. And the headset's still the preferred method of vocal delivery. Anyway, adaptive triggers and haptic feedback. That was the other big thing with the controller. So it looks all right. We still haven't seen the PS5 itself, but we did get full specs from a Mark Cerny presentation not too long ago. It's all kind of above me, if I'm being honest, but as an example, it will run it or output at 10.28 teraflops compared to the Xbox Series X's 12. A lot of the stuff's pretty similar between the two consoles, so they're both running 8 CPU cores. I think the PS5 is at 3.5 gigahertz and the Xbox is at 3.8. They both have 16 gigabytes of memory. There's some differences in, I guess, how the memory and the bandwidth kind of go for each of the consoles, but again, like, I don't know enough to really talk about it. I guess the huge difference on the Series X that we didn't know about before, or since we've talked last, Ben, is it has memory sticks. Like, we're back in
memory cards are back.
99.
Proprietary memory cards. I think these are going to be expensive because they're 1 terabyte SSDs basically.
Yeah.
But I think that's a good idea. I mean, if Microsoft decides to take a bit of a hit and cover some of the costs so they're affordable, this is how you can expand your storage and still get the benefit of they've been touting using SSD. We're going to reduce loading times and make games a lot better to play and run a lot smoother. But if you have them on a normal hard drive, that's not going to work. So at least on Xbox, and I'm going to assume it's going to be the same for the PlayStation, that's not even an option. You need to run it off the SSD or the SSD memory card. But they have confirmed you can save it on you can get like a 10 terabyte external hard drive, keep all your games there that you're not using right now, so you don't have to download them, but you have to move it across when you want to play it. Yeah, I think that's a good compromise for cost versus functionality. So yeah, we'll see what Sony does.
I think so as well. So the Series X will let you use your existing USB hard drives. All your Xbox games or 360 or original Xbox games can play straight off those USB hard drives. But like you said, any Xbox Series X game has to be on the either expansion SSD or your internal SSD, which is also a 1 terabyte internal drive. The PS5's internal drive is 825 gigs. It's also an SSD. It has an expandable SSD slot that will take NVMe SSD drives. Sony's going to certify the ones that will be able to be used, but because they actually don't exist yet, we don't have those certifications until probably the launch of the console itself, which is interesting to say the least.
So this is where they differ. Sony's just using you can use anything which will be compatible, which they have done with the PS5. I mean, you can swap your own hard drive if you want, which you can't do on Xbox. You have to plug in an external drive. Microsoft is going a step further, or a step back, you could say, saying you have to use our memory card, which Sony has done with like the PS Vita, and they got ridiculed because they cost so much.
Yeah.
So I think Xbox won't make that mistake. I think they'll know what it's going to cost to buy like a 1 terabyte expansion for a PS4, and they're going to make their own version equal to that. They're not going to make it cheaper or more expensive to get the Microsoft branded one, because it would just that'd kill them if they did that.
Yeah, for sure. And I'll probably be lazy and try to keep my, or cheap too, and keep my USB 3.0 drives and kind of treat it like you were saying, like the games that I want to play will be on the SSD inside the Xbox, and everything else will kind of just be stored, and I can shift things around depending on my mood.
Well,
especially, go ahead.
External drive is not a lot. 1 terabyte now gets pretty full. So I think I'll need at least one of these expansion cards, maybe two. And then having two Xboxes, it's going to be an easy way to move them around. You don't have to do, at the moment, I'm using an external hard drive and network transfer to move between them. If we're going to get like 200 gig games, I think it's probably going to be an easy way just to say, I'm playing these 4 games right now. They're on the memory card because I want to move them between Xboxes. And only have one version to update.
Yeah. Well, I'm not ready for gigantic games. But like you, I have 2 Xboxes, so buying a disc is kind of out as well. So whatever, future Steve problem. There aren't huge. There are differences between the next gen consoles, but like in reality at this point, I don't think one has a huge advantage over the other. I think the Xbox Series X is probably going to cost more than the PS5, taking into account its better specs. So like there's pros and cons, I think, to either.
I think Microsoft will be all over what PlayStation is doing. PlayStation is, the whole time they've been waiting for Xbox to show their hand, and then I think they've been trying to trump them, but they realized they couldn't with the specs because Xbox was so far ahead. What I'm seeing basically, I mean, the specs go over my head as well, but the analysis I've seen is basically the Xbox One X, Series X is going to be more powerful across the board, generally speaking, but the PS5 has a better SSD setup, so things may load a bit quicker.
Yep.
Maybe those two things will cancel each other out and games will pretty much be the same. So there's pros and cons to both setups. I don't think, even with the extra power, I think Microsoft will just look at whatever Sony does and match it, because the Xbox One launched for $100 US more because it had Kinect in it than the PS4, and that was it, game over. So I don't think they'll allow that to happen again. And they're probably better suited than Sony to take a loss if they have to. Like, you've got Microsoft, which is massive, and so is Sony, but Sony's probably needing their console division to make more money than Xbox does.
Yeah, well, I hope that's true as well, because if that if the pickup rate at launch, if that divide just it blows out exponentially like it did for Xbox One versus PS4, like Microsoft couldn't catch up. And I hope they're at even keel at least, because that's better for us as players, I would say, rather than having one clear winner. As an example, I guess taking something into account like crossplay, like basically Sony had to be dragged to the table kicking and screaming because they had such a market share they didn't want to give it away. So if everyone's kind of at even keel, theoretically, they're more willing to do things like that for us. But anyway, we'll see how that goes.
It'll be a different launch. This is probably going to be our least console warsy launch, in that we already have crossplay. The heads of studios and consoles, they publicly congratulate each other on things. I think someone from Sony, I can't remember who it was now, congratulated Phil Spencer on launching Game Pass in Japan last week. So, they're obviously, Xbox has been doing that for a long time too. Sony, Nintendo doesn't really say anything, but people say "good work, Nintendo" to them, and then they don't reply. So there's a lot more camaraderie between them. And so we don't have that same kind of vicious, ours is better than yours. Like, if you go back and look at some marketing for like the PS3 versus the 360, they were very just attacking the other brand. So we have a lot less of that. It's a lot more open now. Yeah, it's going to be an interesting time. The main thing is it's going to come down to exclusive games, and PlayStation is always going to say that's what we have. And at the moment, that's correct. So we'll have to just see what Xbox has a lot in the works with game studios, but they haven't announced a lot. So it's going to come down to those launch titles. They just need one or two big exclusives beyond Halo, because the PS5 may well have Last of Us Part 2 now. It got delayed and we don't have a release date. So the longer that goes, the more likely it is to be pushed to a cross-gen game, I'd say.
Yeah. Well, man, and good point with The Last of Us Part 2. Like, it was supposed to be out in May. It's been delayed because of logistical issues. The same kind of issues that I guess made it so we had Final Fantasy VII here in Australia early. Sony has cited the logistical issues. Naughty Dog's come out after the fact and said, like, we just want to make sure everybody has the game at the same time. We don't want to have major things spoiled because some people get it and some people don't. But from all the kind of stuff that you've heard about development, it's probably just, some polishing time that Naughty Dog can claim back because of the current condition of the world, which is fine. But yeah, like you just said, I wouldn't be surprised if they decide to hold off The Last of Us Part 2 to PlayStation 5. Like, but there's no point in releasing it a couple months before
there's no point launching that in September and then have a PS5 come in November. So I think it will be on PS4, but I think it'll go to both. It's the obvious play now.
That's what Halo Infinite's doing across console, across generations. So good news for us, I guess, apart from the bad news of the delay, obviously. It's impacted a whole bunch of other games, Iron Man VR, Minecraft Dungeons. I wouldn't be surprised if we see these delays continue. I think we were talking before, Ben, Cyberpunk 2077 is due in September, and CD Projekt Red said, no, we're fine, we're going to hit that. But it's a drastically different world in every sense, but of course in development as well. So I don't know if we'll see what happens with that, with a whole bunch of other releases, or even maybe to some extent. I think it's less of an issue with China kind of coming out of the coronavirus and easing off some restrictions, but like we might see the virus affect the launch of the consoles themselves. We don't know at this point.
We don't know. I hope not, but I think even if the hardware's ready, it might be in shorter supply, so it might be harder to get one. But if the hardware's ready, but the software isn't, the consoles will get delayed. They're not going to launch them without a decent lineup of games. The days of the N64 launching with 2 games are over. They need to have 20 to 30 launch titles there day one. If that can't happen because of this, they have to delay them. There's no other option. So we don't know yet. As you said, the development has been affected, but a lot of developers are working from home across the world. So obviously it changes how they work, but it can still be done. The problem is with Last of Us is the game's pretty much done, but they can't produce the discs and ship them like they normally would. They normally ship them pretty close to launch day, and it's a very tight operation. That can't happen. So as much as a lot of us do just buy a digital copy, they're not going to leave the disc players, high and dry and not be able to get a copy. So they want it to be even across the board. That's why I think maybe Cyberpunk could be delayed if they can't get that. We don't know what's going to happen by September, but if things aren't worldwide open again, they might decide that, we can't launch then, or we need to get these discs shipped like 2 months before the game actually launches. So we just have to see what happens.
Yeah. Depressing.
Yeah. Because otherwise it would be a great time to play. Like, people are at home, they can download stuff, but it's just that people do still get physical copies and there's collector's editions. So it's getting those out is a logistical problem, as well as that finishing of development. So it's not as easy as you'd think in a digital world.
No, especially when you're stuck on ADSL too. That's just me feeling bad for myself. Anything else before we wrap up? I think we've probably hit an hour. I don't even know.
That's a lot for one episode. I think we've re-caught, we've connected. That's what you have to do in these times. You need to stay connected. We've caught up on games and where we're at for now, at least.
Yeah. Well, we're not committing to any publishing schedule by any means, but I feel like we'll be doing more of these more often just because we've got some time on our hands, Ben.
We've got the time, we've got the technology to do this. It's the only way you can catch up with your friends and have an e-beer like we're doing right now. We can do that anyway, but we can't do it in real life, so we'll have to do it over Zoom at the moment.
Correct. But we'll put a pin in this one. We'll go and play some video games together.
Yeah,
Someone else can join us. Too bad for you guys. But thanks for listening. I'm SWrightAU on Twitter and Instagram and most things that are social media related. Ben, what are you?
I am Ben_Salter on Twitter. That's where you can find me for general game musings. Not that much recently. I haven't played that much, but a little bit.
Nice. And Stevivor.com, of course, for video gamey things. A whole bunch of Resident Evil 3 guides. Ben's AFL Evolution 2 review. I reviewed Final Fantasy VII Remake. And lately there's been that weird, crappy online casino study that says future gamers are going to be weird, hunchbacked, beer-gutted, headset, dented head people. It's ridiculous, but if you feel like a laugh, go and take a look. Anyway, thanks for joining me, Ben. It's been great.
It's been good to be back.